You ever have those days when life is calm, quiet, and everything feels right, until someone storms in with entitlement so outrageous you think you've stepped into a bad sitcom? That's exactly what happened to me when my neighbor, let's just call her Karen, decided my private lake house wasn't mine anymore. No, in her world, it was suddenly the ideal venue for her daughter's Sweet 16 party. And if I didn't hand it over, she claimed, I'd better be ready to face a lawsuit. Now, let me give you some context. My lake house isn't just some casual weekend cabin. It's the result of years of blood, sweat, and savings. Every wooden beam, every chair inside, and even the dock out front carries a piece of my history. Long nights, fixing it up, family cookouts by the water, and countless sunsets painting the sky. To me, it's more than property. It's my sanctuary. But to Karen, it was nothing more than a free banquet hall waiting to be claimed. She showed up at my door on a Friday evening, her tone sticky with fake charm. "We've been searching for the perfect spot for my daughter's milestone celebration," she announced, as though she were delivering a royal proclamation. And everyone agrees, your lake house is just right. At first, I laughed, thinking she was joking. But her smile froze, and her voice turned sharp. "I expect you'll hand over the keys next weekend?" she added firmly, as if my ownership meant absolutely nothing. When I told her no, politely but without hesitation, her eyes narrowed to slits. "You don't understand," she snapped. "This is bigger than you. My daughter deserves this. If you refuse, we'll take legal action. I'll handle it personally." The arrogance in her tone was breathtaking. I wasn't just stunned, I was boiling with anger. The sheer audacity of someone thinking they could bully me out of my own home for a teenage birthday bash was beyond belief. But as I stood firm, Karen smirked in that way only people who think they're untouchable can. Right then, I knew this wasn't going to be a harmless neighborhood squabble. It was going to escalate. And the more she pushed, the more I knew I couldn't back down. What I didn't realize was just how far this would spiral, or that it would eventually drag in the state attorney. The morning after Karen's absurd demand, I figured maybe she'd slept on it, realized how insane she'd sounded, and dropped the whole thing. I was wrong. By noon, I heard a heavy knock at my door, the kind you know is meant to start trouble. I opened it to see Karen standing there, this time with her daughter at her side. The girl was dressed like royalty already, a smug expression plastered across her face. Before I could even say hello, Karen spoke, arms crossed like she was running the show. "We've decided next Saturday is the best date. We'll need access on Friday evening to set up the decorations, the food, and the music equipment. Don't worry, we'll clean up after." I was floored. "Let me stop you right there," I said firmly. "This is my house, not a community hall. The answer is no. End of story." Her daughter rolled her eyes and muttered, "This place is ugly anyway." But Karen wasn't backing down. She leaned closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing classified information. "Listen," she hissed. "You don't want to make enemies in this neighborhood. I've got friends on the HOA board. Keep being difficult, and I'll make sure your life here becomes miserable." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about a party anymore. It was about control. Karen thrived on intimidation, and she was convinced she could push me around until I caved. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. When I refused again, calm but firm, she unleashed her so-called nuclear option. She waved a manila folder in my face, claiming it was a draft lawsuit her cousin, who she swore was a lawyer, had already prepared. "We'll sue you for discrimination for denying us access to community property," she barked. Community property? That lake house was deeded under my name, bought with my money, maintained with my sweat. But Karen's twisted logic was her favorite weapon, and she brandished it like she was already in court. I told her flat out to get off my porch. She didn't go quietly, though. As she stormed down the steps, she yelled loud enough for the whole block to hear, "You'll regret this when the court makes you pay." By that evening, the neighborhood rumor mill was in overdrive. My phone started ringing with neighbors asking why I was refusing to let Karen's daughter have her special day. She had twisted the story into some melodrama where I was the cruel, heartless villain who hated kids. That's when I realized this wasn't cooling down. It was about to explode. But what Karen didn't count on was that her little threats would draw the wrong kind of attention. the kind that comes with legal consequences. By the following week, the chaos had ballooned into something out of a daytime soap opera. Karen wasn't just whispering gossip anymore. She was staging a full-on campaign against me. Flyers showed up in mailboxes accusing me of hoarding community resources and robbing neighborhood youth of their joy. On top of that, she was posting nonstop in our local Facebook group, painting herself as the selfless mother up against the mean-spirited loner who refused to share. The comment section lit up, half the people mocking her entitlement, the other half buying into her sob story. Either way, she had stirred the pot, and she was determined to keep it boiling. Then came the envelope, official-looking, thick manila, left squarely on my doorstep. Inside was a notice of intent to sue, signed by her cousin, the so-called attorney. The letter accused me of violating community trust, blocking access to public waters, and demanded I surrender my lake house for reasonable neighborhood use. I almost laughed out loud at the absurdity, but beneath the humor was a simmering rage. Who did she think she was? This wasn't a public park. It was my property. Still, the idea of being dragged into some bogus lawsuit gnawed at me. The next morning, I headed downtown and booked a meeting with a real attorney. After reading through the so-called lawsuit, he smirked and shook his head. "This isn't even worth the ink it's printed with," he said. "Her cousin's bluffing. But if she tries to file anything, it could still cost you time and money. My advice? Document everything." So that's exactly what I did. Every threatening note she left, every post she made, every heated encounter, I saved it all. Because deep down, I knew she wasn't going to stop, and I was right. That Friday evening, I pulled into my driveway only to find balloons tied to my mailbox and cars lining both sides of the street. My driveway was blocked, and the heavy thump of bass music was rattling the windows of my lake house. Karen had broken in. She and her crew were stringing lights across my dock, setting up speakers and hauling coolers onto my porch like it was their private club. I stormed down and demanded they leave immediately. But Karen, holding a wine glass like some queen surveying her kingdom, smirked. "It's happening whether you like it or not. Call the cops if you want. Once they see my paperwork, they'll side with me." That was my breaking point. I didn't just call the police. I contacted the county attorney's office, too. If Karen wanted to play legal hardball, she was about to find out just how badly she'd miscalculated. When the officers arrived, Karen turned on the theatrics. She welcomed them like VIP guests, waving her bogus legal documents in the air. "See," she said proudly, "this property belongs to the lake community, and my daughter has every right to celebrate here." The officers skimmed the papers, exchanged a look, and then turned to me. I handed over my deed, along with the thick folder of records I'd been keeping. One of the officers sighed and said flatly, "Ma'am, this house is not community property. It's his. You can't just throw a party here without his permission." Karen's grin slipped, but she wasn't done. "This is discrimination," she screeched, pointing at her sulking daughter and her pack of friends. The officers warned her to leave, but she flat out refused. That's when they called in a county investigator to formally review her complaint. And just like that, the mess landed squarely on the desk of the state attorney's office. Within days, Karen's little stunt had escalated far beyond neighborhood gossip. The state attorney personally reviewed her cousin's so-called lawsuit and laughed it straight out of the building. Not only was it baseless, but it bordered on fraud. Between the falsified claims, the trespassing, and the harassment, the case against her was piling up fast. Then I got the call. The state attorney himself told me, "You did the right thing documenting everything. We're not just tossing her case. We're considering charges for falsifying documents and criminal trespass." When I broke that news to Karen, the facade finally shattered. Gone was the smug smile. In its place was trembling rage. "You'll regret this," she screamed, but the words carried no power anymore. The neighborhood had already seen her meltdown, and now the law itself was against her. In the end, she was fined for trespassing, slapped with a formal warning, and her cousin's so-called law practice ended up reported to the state bar. The sweetest irony? Not only did Karen fail to steal my lake house, but her daughter's big birthday bash ended up shoved into their cramped backyard with just a handful of pitiful guests. As for me, I got my peace back. My lake house is still what it's always been. Mine. And now, every sunset I watch from that dock feels even sweeter, knowing that entitlement doesn't always win. Sometimes, the law itself steps in to remind people of common sense. So the next time someone tries to bully their way into what's yours, remember this story. Stand your ground because sometimes the best victory is refusing to give in. So tell me, do you think Karen had a point? Or was I right to hold firm? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this wild ride, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next outrageous Karen drama.